Welcome to this episode of Hands Off. My name is Rhett. I am your host. We're continuing our series on breaking code silence and WASP. I hope that you've been following along. And most especially tonight, we have a great guest. Her name is Gabby Wolson, and I'm super excited to have her come on board and tell her story. So, Gabby, can you... First, let me just start off by thanking you for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I know what it's like to always, to tell your story. So I think it's fantastic. So let's start by just kind of having you introduce yourself. Tell us, where you're from, the school, and I have a hard time always calling it a school, but that you attended, and how long you were there, and just like a quick little background on who you are.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. I grew up in the Boston area, although I'm now a New York City girl in Queens. And I went to the King George School, which is an emotional growth boarding school, or was. It no longer exists, in Vermont. And I was there from 2004 to 2006 with a 6-week break at a wilderness program called Ascent, which was in northern Idaho.
Wow. Okay. So can you just kind of like tell us your story in regards to how did you end up there? Did you know that you were going there? Who made that decision in regards to the 6 weeks in the wilderness program? And it's not that we haven't explored those, but everybody's circumstances and situation is different, and I would love for you to be able to just kind of like, give us like a quick little synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. My mother suffered from mental illness, and she was a single mother. I didn't have any siblings. So it was a lot of pressure on me. There was a lot of anger in the household. It was a pretty unstable household. And as a growing child, as I said, that really has an effect. So I struggled socially, I struggled academically, and I definitely showed kind of some behaviors of potentially not going down the best path. With that being said, I did not have the common profile of someone that went to these schools. I never even drank alcohol. I was a virgin. I was showing these rebellious tendencies, but didn't really actually participate in the activities. It was more attention-seeking behaviors,
Sure.
I would say. So my mom didn't know how to parent me and felt I was out of control and sent me away. I think it was absolutely the wrong decision, but I also believe that she was just trying to do what was best for me.
Right.
She chose the school because it specialized in art therapy, and I was a dancer. I ended up studying dance in college. And after being there a few months, my program decided that I needed to go to wilderness. I guess typically kids had gone to a wilderness program before boarding school, and I had not. So they basically threatened my parents and said that if I did not go to this program, that I could not continue there. And unsurprisingly, they suggested a program owned by the same parent company.
Imagine.
And went there. My experience at the high school was absolutely horrific, but my experience at the wilderness program was straight up abuse and traumatic.
Can you explain?
Sorry.
Are you comfortable enough to explain like what that means, the depth of that? I mean, I've heard things, but I definitely would love for you to like elaborate if you could.
Absolutely. The wilderness program from the outside kind of looked like a boot camp, which already is pretty tough. But then there was the absolute deep emotional abuse. So early on in my program, we did an exercise where we had to tell our life stories, every bad thing we done, every milestone, every trauma that we had. I had presented mine, and then my group asked me to step outside while they talked about me, which was strange. And ultimately, they decided I'd not shared enough because I didn't have the same kind of stories that my peers did, and was punished for not having the same kind of stories. And what my punishment was for 2 weeks, I had to wear an orange vest. I wasn't allowed to speak to absolutely anybody. I had to sleep outside instead of in a tent. I had to be served last every single meal. I had to stand in the back of the line every time we were hiking or anytime we were in a line. And every day I would wake up and they'd give me random requirements like, oh, you have to do a certain number of jumping jacks today. You have to drink a certain amount of water. And on one particular day, we were hiking. I needed to go to the bathroom. They would not let me, which was very common, the control of our bowel movements and bladder. And I peed my pants and was sitting in wet underwear for hours. We finally got to base camp. I'm so excited to change. And they told me I couldn't set up my tent because I hadn't drank enough water that day, and forced me to chug 3 whole Nalgene's worth of water, which was way too much for me. I started vomiting and they told me I needed to continue. So I'm sitting in my wet underwear, chugging water, vomiting it up, drinking it, vomiting it, while they laughed and sat there. I remember a night where it was Christmas and we had hiked to a little cabin, and as a special treat for the group, we had a special meal and we went inside and there was a fire. But because I was on this special orange vest bands, I was forced to sit outside on Christmas on the front porch, hearing everybody laughing, just sitting in the darkness by myself and having rice and beans. I wasn't even allowed to have the Christmas meal.
What, you know, it always just amazes me, and I ask this question: was there a point in which you thought, oh my God, I'm never going to get through this? And somehow you did after 2 years. And I'm sorry, how old were you when you went in there?
When I graduated, I was 18, so I went in at 16.
16. So at 16 years old, you're navigating your way through this, what is a traumatic experience. And there definitely were some dark days. I always ask, what do you think contributed to you getting through that? Like, how did you do it?
I think disassociation was a big one.
Ooh, yeah.
Just like really just like being somewhere else, or not even really associating with what was happening to me. I think there was also a lot of brainwashing. There was a lot of like cultish speak that I bought into. I knew how to play the game. I mean, at my boarding school, I was the head of prom committee and I was a dorm head and I was all these things because I knew that if I played the game, I would get benefits, and I did.
Right.
I was allowed more family phone calls and a dorm by myself. If I played the game, I got more benefits. I think dreaming of my future, knowing one day I would eventually be out of there. And I think leaning on my friends as well was a big part.
Yeah, that is a common theme in terms of people that I'm interviewing and asking them how they get through it. And a lot of it has to just do with their friends and their fellow classmates. And, you know, because, I mean, obviously there is a sense of, you know, you're all going through this together in some way, shape, or form. Did you have an opportunity to, I mean, at 16, you have friends back home. Did they know that you were going away? Or did just one day you were just like gone and that was it?
Yeah, so I did know, thank God, because I hear horrific stories of people being kidnapped.
Yes.
I knew I was going. What I did not know was what the school was. My parents only told me about that I was going to dance, that it was an art school. And I show up and got strip searched. Had to get completely naked, jump up and down, cough.
Yep.
They start going through my things. They took my Jessica Simpson poster because she was in her underwear. Like, I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
And then for the first few days, everyone kept asking me, why are you here? And I literally responded, for school. I had no idea what that question meant. And I literally had to put the puzzle pieces together of where I was and what the hell was happening to me.
So it's interesting because, one of the questions that I like to ask, and I kind of already know the answer, but I get the impression that you don't see yourself as a troubled teen, that you were just more so a teenager kind of like in trouble in that particular situation. And I hear so many times that I just agreed just to agree to the things that they wanted me to be, or whatever type of behavior they thought that you should have had. It was easier just to agree to it than to be disbelieved, or that you weren't being forthright and telling the truth. And does that apply? I mean, I can't even, it doesn't even seem like you were like a troubled teen.
It super applies, but the irony is the number one takeaway I got from that experience is a story that there's something wrong with me. As I work with a therapist, I work with a life coach, and it doesn't matter what we're talking about, we always come back to that core story that I hold on to. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. I kept it a secret that I went to these schools and this program probably until about like 3 or 4 months ago, because I was so ashamed. No one in my life knew about it. And I really believed I had to hold this as a secret, that I wasn't like other people, that even though I'm happily married and super successful entrepreneur that started her own business, I still somewhere in the back of my head believe things need to be fixed. I'm not right. There's something wrong with me. I'm not normal.
Yeah, I know I always like want to dive in and talk about like what life looks like today. So what I think we're going to do, we're going to take a quick little break, and then when we come back, I really want to elaborate on where you're at today. But I also want to stay with the whole thought process of, what is wrong with me, and that whole, there must be something. I think it's really great, and your transparency, no doubt, is just, it's phenomenal. So I'm so glad that you're here. So we'll take the quick break, we'll come right back, and then we'll pick it right back up from there.
Great.
Awesome.
Listen, what will make your event simply beautiful? Is it your attire, your decorations, your entertainment? Well, join me, Alicia Simone, as I chat with some amazing vendors and clientele who will share their stories and images and their experiences. Right here on RVN TV, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and Wednesday at 4 p.m. It will be simply beautiful. See you then.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
We are are back here at Hands Off with my guest, Gabby Wolson, and I don't even want to waste any time kind of recapping the first part of this because it's just so compelling to me. So let's talk about what life looks like for you today, as you had described, where you're at, successful, married, entrepreneur. I'd like you to just kind of like tell us about that.
Sure. So today, I started my own company. I'm a career and life coach. So I do a fusion of kind of the career tools, helping someone with a resume and their LinkedIn, with kind of the deeper, what do I want to do with my life, and how do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to impact the world, and really just what I want to create. So I support my clients in any transition, but especially in a career transition. It's been a journey learning how to be a business owner. I never believed I would do this, but I'm happy to say I have a full practice and I work with incredible people. I got married this past September. It was a COVID wedding.
Wow, okay.
And my husband is my everything, and just embodies the most amount of support and partnership and play that I could ever imagine.
What a dynamic, I don't even want to say story because testimony. I'll put it as that. And so when you got out of school, you went to college. You danced through college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what school was it that you had gone to? Not that it matters.
I went to Goucher College in Baltimore. It's a small liberal arts school.
Okay. And when did you make the decision? You were like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna create my own business, and I'm gonna be a life
coach. Oh gosh, it's been such a journey.
Yeah. I mean, how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, so most of my career actually has been in human resources, corporate human resources,
Great.
So having a more classic 9 to 5. And it was kind of this perfect storm of, I started working with my own coach and seeing the unbelievable results in my life from that support. I also, I loved working in HR, but I found more and more I was attracted to championing the individual and not really having accountabilities to the corporate overhead and considering what's best for the business as well. And so I went and I went through a pretty rigorous year-long coach and leadership training program. And within like the first 2 months, I was like, I need to do this full time, and left my job. I basically built up my business over the past few years slowly, and then left my job this past August and have been coaching full time. And I pinched myself. I never actually believed I would be successful, kind of connecting back to what we were talking about earlier. And it's a very out of body experience for me that I am at a full practice. I'm meeting my income goals. I'm creating impact for my clients, and I'm enjoying not having a boss and watching a little reality TV before I start work.
Sure, absolutely. And let's talk about that real quick in regards to, the lingering effects. The very idea that somewhere inside of you sits that thought process that there is something that's wrong with you, clearly there is not. And but when you hear something enough, you start to believe that, especially when you are young and a brainwashing, activity is happening. Are you? Is it something that you battle, or is it something that you have battled?
Both.
Both. Okay, that's fair.
It's definitely something I battle. I mean, literally, for instance, I'm on a trip right now with some of my husband's friends, and I had a breakdown the first few days because in my head I thought, oh my God, they don't like me, I'm not helping enough. Just these like criticisms that are so not necessarily necessary. They love me and it's not so serious. We're just a bunch of friends quarantining together. And it was that old trauma, that old voice that just comes in all the time. And every result that I keep building my life has been a breakthrough in belief of and for myself. And it's quieting that voice that I can't do it. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So I do want to ask real quick, and you know, do you have a relationship with your mom today?
Yes, I do. We are actually incredibly close, and I'm very grateful because I have heard so many horror stories from this community of people being estranged. We are very, very close. But I would say that for many years, it's because I compartmentalized my anger towards her, that I felt if I really allowed myself to be with my anger, I couldn't actually be in a relationship with her. And it's just been this past year that I've been exploring that with my therapist, creating a space where I can actually express my anger, but with my therapist, not towards my mom. And our relationship right now is better than it has ever been.
That's great. That's really great. One of the things that you had said was that you really haven't spoken about this, only until recently. What inspired you to want to speak?
It's a little cliche, but Paris Hilton. I think when people started talking about the industry, I learned about the industry because I didn't know it was this big thing out there. I just knew it was this crazy story of something that I had gone through. I didn't know that there were hundreds and thousands of people. I didn't know there were hundreds of programs. I didn't know about programs that treated kids even worse than what I went through. And it was clear to me from a community perspective, I needed to tell my story to create change. This has to stop. This cannot continue. And from a personal perspective, it invited me to start to own my story and stop hiding.
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, you are a coach and a life coach, and you know what happens when you become self-empowered and what it does. But there is no doubt in my mind that you doing this, aside from the fact that, we know that speaking a story helps somebody, always. It doesn't, I don't care who you are, how often it's stated, you may never know the person that you have helped, but it always helps somebody. But there is no doubt in my mind that you will, flourish beyond probably anything that you could have believed, because it's going to help you coach some individual that, the obstacles that were before you, you have demonstrated what it takes to overcome those. And my goodness, I just can't even, to have you here today, knowing, based on the number of people that I've interviewed, the groups that we both belong to, the stories that you hear, you know that your life could have gone a completely different path, and it didn't.
Absolutely.
And that's because of you.
Thank you.
So when you have that thought that there must be something wrong with me, I hope that you look at it in that there's something right with you, because you have this ability to, and no wonder you became a life coach. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I think it's just extraordinary. Is that the kind of stuff that, do you reflect on to pull yourself out of that hole? Because I know I have my own trauma just from speaking to people. You hold on, you're with it for the rest of your life. It's just whether you live in it or live with it. Is this what pulls you out as you reflect back, or what works?
Absolutely. Never in a million years did I think that this would be my life. It's what I dreamt of, no question, but I didn't think that it would be obtainable. And about 9 months ago, I told someone my story, and she called me a superhero. And I looked at her like she was crazy. And I said, wait, I'm telling you a story about how I was a troubled teen, about how there was something wrong with me. And she was like, no, you just told me a story about your power, your resiliency, your positivity, and what you've created. And her saying that, I think about it all the time. And even just that conversation was a huge shift for me. Yes. Because as much as I love the life I've created, I don't think I took a moment to appreciate or to even reflect on how I got there. And, you know, for better or for worse, the skills that I developed during those programs, how I can use them today to be agile and positive.
Yeah. And while, you know, I am not like that curriculum and that method goes against everything that I believe in, I think that somewhere within you there was an inner curriculum that took over and got you through that in a way that not too many people can understand unless you've gone through some sort of childhood traumatic experience. And I just hope that if you are ever doubting, like, you know, because we all do it, but like your existence and worthiness matter to a level that is just, I mean, it's there from, it's your birthright anyway, but my goodness, just to have you get through that and what you'll do for others, what you're doing right now is just, you know, definitely don't ever forget that, because you matter greatly. I can't even begin to tell you enough. And you know, if there was somebody watching this and they're struggling, and you know what I mean by that in terms of just, you know, the people that have intersected with this topic, what would you say to them?
I would say that you're powerful, that you have the power to get through anything, but more importantly, that you have the power to create something new. Yeah. You have the power to create that dream life. I think, you know, looking at a lot of my friends who were in the program, it was that, as you said earlier, they were disempowered. They didn't believe in their own futures. And us survivors, we can do it.
Yeah. You know, the fact that you got through that is step one right there. It shows that you have it. And then when you were talking about how you built your business and, like, you know, you don't have to solve it all in one shot, and you don't have to figure it all out. You just only have to focus on what is the next right move and do it, and then move forward. And I see that that's what you have done. And you know, I always hate this question when somebody is newly married, but do you have any intentions on having children?
It's a great question. I do, and I haven't for the majority of my life. Because I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but because same thing, had a story in my head that I was not fit to be a mother, that I was not going to be a good mother, so I convinced myself I didn't want children. But when I met this perfect man and did some deep emotional work, I realized it's absolutely what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is no doubt in my mind that you are going to be a fantastic mom, and that you are going to represent what other parents should do. And if there is a parent that's out there that's considering sending their child to one of these schools that still exist today, I know that your voice in this particular moment will change that. Yeah. So I can't thank you enough for coming on here. You are an inspiration, and I really look forward to broadcasting this episode, because you are a representation of hope, and that it can be done. And, you know, I applaud you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Absolutely.
all the work that you're doing. This is important.
Absolutely. So keep on coaching, because I mean, you're coaching way more than probably what you ever thought you could, and what is to come. So, but that is our show, and definitely. This is exactly why we do this, so that we can talk to individuals like Gabby who have gone through something and learn what it was that made it work. So make sure that you continue to watch our series on Breaking Code Silence, and thank you so much for watching.